Funding for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Leanne S., John DuLong, and Josias Melendez, listeners like you. Become a supporter of the podcast today at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. Funding for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Facebook,
Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits,
Twitter,
@ECL Podcast,
Tumblr,
ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com,
email,
ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com,
and by contributions from listeners like you.
literally at ElwoodCityLimits.libsyn.com.
Thank you.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, baby. What was revealed as Michael Cohen's third client? Why, it was Arthur Reed. That's right, Trump, Sean Hannity, and Arthur Reed. Way, pop culture, hey!
See, you're a lot more tuned into that than I am. I'm just like, duh, what did I do today? I don't know. Then I guess nothing happened. So let's just use that, the fact that we don't have an intro to say, welcome to Elwood City Limits.
Why, oh my goodness, the intro was the friends we made along the way.
This is Will Young for the episodic Arthur podcast. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us for another episode. That's Lucas Mancini, my co-host.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the Theater of the Mind.
I'm glad that we were able to record this week, of course, as I'm always glad. I don't take any of our recording dates for granted anymore, especially now that we have that Patreon. Definitely don't want to let our paying listeners down.
That's right. Much like the PBS television show Arthur, we do it for the viewers like you, and consider every episode we make a thanks to you.
And speaking of people like other people, we have emails. Yeah, that's right. Before we get into today's Arthur episode, we've got a couple of emails to read from ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com. So let's get over to the mailbag. This first one is from Leanne, who is, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Leanne was actually our very first patron over on Patreon.
I see what you're doing, Will. First patrons get first email. It's a little bit of patron preference. Hey, money well, as far as I'm concerned, money well spent. Let's hear this email.
Did she send her email first? Am I picking her first because she's a patron? A little from column A, a little from column B. So, Leanne wanted to talk about a few things from our recent April Fool's episode, Cybermates.
Great, awesome. Can't wait to jump right back in.
We were talking about a certain singer from Quebec, and she wanted to point out, she laughed a little, I pronounced his name as Roche Voisine instead of Rock Voisine. The H is silent.
It doesn't matter what his name is. That was a Dwayne the Rock Johnson joke. I wasn't trying to be mean, Leanne.
You need to have the inflection in there if you're imitating. Otherwise, that I was like, ooh, that's a little spicy, a little too spicy for the pod.
No, I didn't mean to be rude. I thank you for the correction, Leanne. I just wanted to say what the Rock does.
And I mean, it makes sense. The Rock Voisine, so that's his name. Got it. It looks so much like it should be. Anyway, that's French pronunciation for you. Leanne also wants to ask a question. If you could choose to have dinner with someone, dead or alive, who would it be? Let's limit this to one person.
Who would?
So I think I know. For me, it would probably be Kevin Smith.
Really interesting. You know what? For me, it'd probably be Jeff Gerstmann.
Oh, that's a good one. You've taken a picture with
right.
one Jeff Gerstmann. You were very lucky.
I've had a very brief conversation with him. I was quite starstruck at the time, so I could barely get any words out. But it's someone I'd love to pick the brain of.
What would you guys have for dinner?
Knowing Jeff, probably like, I don't know, a pizza.
Oh, but a very... he's pretty particular about his pizza, isn't he? As he's pretty particular about a lot of things.
Yeah, I'd leave the choice of meal up to him.
Yeah, Kevin Smith for me, just because he's a huge inspiration, and for me, there probably wouldn't be a podcast if there, an Elwood City Limits if it wasn't for Kevin Smith in a way. So, very much would like to meet him, and have dinner with him. Something involving mashed potatoes, perhaps. Leanne finishes with, also, I'm not sure you answered this before, but who would you want to see yourself be good friends with in the Arthur universe if you yourself were in the universe with them? So who would be your best pal? Which Arthur character would be your best pal?
See, a cop-out would be Bill Clinton or Art Garfunkel, but if I'm going to narrow it down a little bit, I would say... is his name Rattles?
Rattles from the Tough Customers?
Rattles, because I am I'm a rebel. I'm sort of a...
You're a rebel?
I'm a delinquent, so I would fit right in with Rattles. I mean, the obvious answer, again, is Buster, but I feel like it's a case where we're too alike, so we'd probably get on each other's nerves. So I'm going to go with the Rattles.
Lucas Delinquent Mancini over here, spray painting walls and shoplifting.
Exactly, that's me.
Watch out for him. I was kind of thinking the same thing of, like, I initially want to be like, hey, probably Arthur, but Arthur and I are far too similar, so I think that would just be the same thing. Like, especially because Arthur's been kind of annoying me lately on the show, so I don't think I would want to hang out with him too much. I think I want to say maybe Binky. I think maybe Binky and I could get along pretty well. But or we could just be way too different. It's hard to say.
Oh, you know what? I would say Sue Ellen. I would really enjoy Sue Ellen's company.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know. You've mentioned how much you're fond of Fern.
Oh yeah, no. As soon as you said her name, I just thought, yeah, I would absolutely want to be best friends with Fern. Leanne says, "Take care and happy spring if it ever decides to show up in the Maritimes because it just can't stop snowing over here."
I'm actually. It's been pretty mild lately. Today was the cold. Well, yesterday was like the coldest day in a while. So we're getting it here and there. You know what they say, Will? You don't like the weather in Nova Scotia, you wait 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mom.
See, all you Americans out there, that one's brand new for you. You never heard that one before. You're probably keeled over right now.
Take that one on credit, or else Lucas Delinquent Mancini will come and TP your internet.
They're like, man, goodness, this regional humor, it's hilarious.
Thank you, Leanne, for that email. We also have another email from one Ursula Cat. Ursula says...
That's an awesome name, by the way.
It sure is. So they say they wanted to tell us, first of all, that Nemo, the cat from the previous episode, is a tuxedo American-British short hair.
Awesome.
That's the name for Nemo's type of cat.
I'm so glad I know that now.
Black and white cats are Ursula's favorite color of cat. They say, I know a lot of goofy names for them, but tuxedo is commonly accepted as a shortened term. It's always hard to tell the exact shape of cats, so I can't tell if Nemo has the more angular American face or the more round British face. But generally, if you see a normal-looking cat with a long tail and hair that isn't noticeably long, that cat is probably an American English short hair. Speaking of regional humor, we actually had a tuxedo cat that ran for mayor.
Oh
once.
My goodness! How could I forget about? Was it? Oh,
Tuxedo Stan.
Okay, it's either Tuxedo Sam or Tuxedo Stan. Yeah, I remember Tuxedo Stan. R.I.P. He unfortunately passed away fairly recently, but Tuxedo Stan will live on through the annals of Halifax history
as the cat that actually had a bid for mayor of our city, and that's true. You can look up Tuxedo Stan. Pretty cute cat too. Ursula continues, as someone who loves cats enough to make it part of my online persona's name, I am really not into the anti-cat bias of 2000s kids cartoons. Between some cute protagonists being mice being chased by cats, and human or funny animal protagonists who are hardcore dog supporters. It's weird how consistently cats were made out to be cold and unfeeling monsters. Maybe I just got really sensitive to it because I was a sensitive kid at the time, but that's my take on it. It does seem really weird, and yeah, especially, I don't think it's just the 2000s either. Like, you watch a like a Beatrix Potter cartoon from the 80s or 90s. There's a lot of villainous cats in there.
Or even 2018. This came up like yesterday. I went to go see Isle of Dogs with a group of friends. And, well, don't you know, the villains of that film, spoilers for Isle of Dogs, skip ahead a minute if you don't want to hear a minor plot detail. No. This is like early on in the movie. Just the villains in the movie are cat lovers, an ancient contingent of cat lovers that try to put together a government conspiracy to send all the dogs to Trash Island. So that's basically the impetus for the film. But yeah, the cat-loving people are all evil. And if you look back at the film Cats versus Dogs, I think the cats were the bad guys in that one too.
How was Isle of Dogs?
It's a really beautiful film aesthetically. I found it was a tad self-indulgent and a tad overlong. If it was a little bit shorter, I think it would have been a lot punchier and a lot more effective. But I must say, it did make me miss my dog quite a bit, so I had to go visit him at my parents' house. But yeah, overall, it's definitely worth seeing. I'm picky when it comes to Wes Anderson. Like, some of his best movies are some of my favorites, so I hold them to a higher standard. So it wasn't necessarily in that upper echelon for me.
Okay. I still want to see it, so hopefully I will before it leaves theaters. Thank you, Ursula Cat and Leanne, for your emails. That's elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Whether you're a patron or whether you're not, we'd love to hear from you. But hey, we don't want to get in a great big fight about whose email's going first.
I know, I got it. I hear you loud and clear. What I should have said is like, the Skype connection skipped. Well, I did hear you.
Now you know what it feels like to grind the show to a halt. That's, of course, a reference to the fact that our Arthur deep dive this week is starting with the episode Mom and Dad Have a Great Big Fight. I had some not high expectations, but I was very interested to see where this one was going to go because I remembered it fairly well, but it was good to revisit it, and of course hope that you do along with us as well.
Conversely, I didn't remember it at all.
So we'll have to see how you felt about it when all's said and done. So the episode kind of starts off with not so much of a narrator. In fact, it's a little bit less picturesque than some Arthur openings have looked before, because Mom and Dad are in the kitchen trying to prepare for a get-together they're having that night, and we've got like these
Arthur's dad forgot his friends were coming over.
Yeah, that's a big time party foul. We even get like a couple of like canted camera angles and like pans around the kitchen. It's a little bit chaotic, and then of course Arthur and DW burst in and they're having another argument, and the dog's barking and the baby is doing this, and just like, okay, scenes from my future parenthood adventures, I'm sure, whenever that happens.
It's like one of those like late Judd Apatow movies that are all about parenthood.
Dad's like making some kind of concoction, maybe a cake or something, and Mom's chopping onions. And then all of a sudden, Dad drops the bowl of what he's mixing, but then we get a freeze frame because who is actually doing this cold open but Nadine?
That's right. Nadine's introduced to the episode. I think this is her first time in the sort of narrator's chair.
No. This is, I have the note here that she hasn't done it in a while, but it's not the first time. Remember the episode where DW got lost in the mall and she did the opening that was like Frankenstein?
Oh, I forgot all about that.
You see?
I do see.
I feel like Nadine's been a narrator a couple of times, but not for a long time. So enough
and certainly not in media res as we see it here. This is a real rolling start to the episode with the freeze frame and all.
Mm-hmm. I did appreciate, so Nadine kind of introduces the episode even by its official title, Mom and Dad Have a Great Big Fight. And then when we come back from the title card, she's like doing the Sonic Idol animation for when you don't you don't touch him for a little bit. And he's like tapping his toe and like looking at his watch.
And she says she says exactly what we've all been thinking. Is after the title card, she goes, you're back. Bet you've been waiting to see this thing smash.
And it does. The milk and the batter of whatever it is kind of fall down.
Oh, so before we move on, we got to tackle this. It's a bag of milk, which I thought was something that was unique to Canada. It's one of those. It's a bag of milk in the like holder that holds the bag of milk. Do you know what I'm talking about here?
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah. I thought Americans were always in whenever I used to see Tumblr posts that were like, "Wow, Canada's so weird." One of the things they would always cite is that we have milk in bags.
I think that's a cultural. That's like one of those weird minor cultural stereotypes, but clearly it's either our storyboard artist is Canadian, which may or may not be true, or we've got infiltration of milk bags into American society. Nadine rewinds it back so that we get things from the perspective of DW and Arthur, who are outside the room when the whole...
Quite literally, by the way. There's like a rewind effect and everything goes in reverse.
The whole conflict that the two of them were having was that she wanted Arthur to play Confuse the Goose with her, but Arthur had to complete his homework first, and then it just kind of went from there. Like she was bugging him, and Arthur clearly was using his homework as an excuse for not wanting to play. And I forget exactly how this gets set up, but we get like a little imagination of DW kind of... Is she wishing that her parents would take her side more? Because...
Yeah. So she wishes, she's like, I wish, in fact, she says, why do they have to be fair all the time?
Right.
And then she kind of pontificates about what it would be like if they weren't fair. And then we get this bizarre sequence where Arthur talks like a spinach head, if you remember the spinach heads. And he has giant feet, like he's in the Rescue Heroes or something. And which, again, they never address why his feet are huge in DW's imagination. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean or represent, but he's just sort of kind of a slobbering idiot. And he's like, I don't want to play homework. I don't want to play with DW. And DW's parents totally take her side. And they were like, what's more important, homework or the happiness of a little girl? And then Arthur responds with, is that a trick question?
Yeah, so this is another one in the long line of either DW thinks Arthur is stupid, or she thinks that he is like a pig, like he just eats all the time. So this is definitely like she imagines Arthur as this just gigantic dummy, and I feel like the big feet are just like, he's a big friggin' clown of an oaf kind of thing.
I see.
Like he just comes in like he's got these lazy eyes, like he's half asleep. He literally enters the room and goes, duh. It's the kind of thing like where like I did that when I was a little kid, and it's just like when you imagine somebody that you don't like and you like make them as cartoonishly stupid in your imagination as you can because you just hate their guts so much, and then conversely, the mom and dad take DW's side, and when they're talking to DW, their voices are so like saccharine and sweet. You kind of mentioned it, just like dad's delivery of like, what's more important, homework or the happiness of a little girl?
There's a part where they kind of, unbeknownst to anything, turn to Arthur and go, stop that! And Arthur's like, what? And they're like, you were looking at DW without smiling.
I really like these imaginations just because they're so over the top and show DW's megalomaniacal side, I guess. Like her desire to be loved by everybody and showered with affection. And it's very childish, but also in a way very relatable as well. So I really enjoyed this. DW is playing Confuse the Goose with Nadine, which we actually get a funny explanation for in a little bit, and then she hears.
By the way, is this the first actual appearance of Confuse the Goose?
No, dude. We've seen Confuse the Goose a few times.
Like
now.
I know we've seen the box, but have we seen it being played with the flippers and the ball and everything?
Yeah, I think so. In the episode where the rainy day episode, I think DW was playing Confuse the Goose. We saw what it looked like.
Oh, okay. Hey, if that's the case, great consistency.
Oh yeah, Confuse the Goose is a staple by this point. So DW hears the things fall on the ground, and then she kind of hears Mom and Dad's quote-unquote great big fight, but it's really, for you and I, it's not really a fight. They're just both, it's actually pretty realistic. Like, they're both kind of
flustered
keyed up a little bit.
Yeah,
they're frustrated, and their tone of voice is kind of annoyed and a little aggressive, but they're not fighting with each other. They're just kind of trying to handle the situation and, like I said, kind of keyed up. So a little kind of realistic. They're not like screaming at each other or anything like that. And I also, speaking of realism, DW, when she refers to the fight, like when she hears it herself and when she kind of relates it back to Arthur, she doesn't hear the fight. Like, she doesn't hear the actual words. She just kind of hears the raised voices between Mom and Dad, and it really scares her.
Again, I appreciate that they didn't actually make it like some sort of cartoonish, like, all-out insult fest, sort of like Arthur and DW have later on in the episode. I like that it's just, sometimes things get a little tense, especially when you're planning to have people over, and so they just kind of raise their voices a little bit, or you could tell they're both kind of at the end of their rope emotionally, and so I liked that detail. The way they... The way they handle this sort of serious topic of parents getting in a fight, they do it really well, and they handle it with respect.
And it can be easy to forget because, when you're a kid, your parents fighting is kind of scary, like hearing them be angry. Like, and I guess I'm speaking personally because, like, that was one of my least favorite things when I was a kid, was to hear my parents fight, and it is scary, and it just kind of makes you feel all kinds of negative emotions. So even though DW is imagining it as like this kind of like this unintelligible screaming match that they had, it's still like it totally makes sense that it would be really scary to her. Scary enough that she like runs up to Arthur's room and completely forgets the fight that they had and asks him for help. And we get like a flashback of, again, her just kind of hearing this weird garbled speech of the two of them arguing with each other. But none of the actual content. And we see her playing with Nadine, and Arthur says, "Hey, wait a minute. If you could play Confuse the Goose with Nadine, why did you even need me?" And DW says, "Because Nadine and I always tie at everything." Which I thought was pretty funny.
Which is both a fun little like bit of just like a little bit of lore for the Arthur universe, but also makes logical sense.
Yeah. So Arthur is kind of not really. He thinks that DW is trying to have him on again, like she's not being truthful. So she and him listen from the top of the steps and actually catch Mom and Dad again, kind of again speaking to each other in a tense manner, but not actually arguing. Like they're trying to clean up the mess, and they're just both kind of tense was the right word. You said it. I'm glad you did. So they both think that Mom and Dad are like in the middle of a huge fight, and this is going to have big time repercussions. I think it's around here that they're like talking about what they could be fighting about. Like DW and Arthur are just like, what could they be fighting about? And I forget. I apologize. I didn't write down all the reasons that they had. I think Arthur at one point says they're probably fighting because of you, because you're such a big pain. And then DW, like, they keep going back and forth over insults.
I definitely remember DW's final retort, which is they're probably fighting because Arthur has glasses.
Yeah. It's even, she even puts a little stink on it. She's just like, you wear glasses.
Well, DW and Arthur are almost having their own fight themselves, which I thought was interesting. There's levels to the great big fights in this episode. They interpret Mom and Dad having a fight, which causes them to have a fight. It's just like Yoda said in the Star Wars prequels, fear leads to what is it?
I'm not helping you. I want to see where you go with this.
See, I remember all the components, but I don't remember the order. So it's like fear leads to anger, anger leads to hatred, hatred leads to suffering. Is that how it goes?
That's it. That's exactly it. Very good.
Anyway, Yoda's words, true as always, because now DW and Arthur are fighting as a result of the previous fight, which scared them. DW herself, Arthur initially doesn't believe that his mom and dad are having a fight, but then when DW sort of refuses to, he's like, okay, you can stop joking now, or you can stop pretending, and when she is still visibly upset, he starts to believe her a little bit more.
At this point, we get essentially the bulk of the rest of the episode is a series of fantasies that they have about what their life will be like since mom and dad are fighting, which means that, which could mean a number of things. And these ones I actually were very interesting to see and mostly very funny. So the first thing is that DW is afraid that they'll never speak to each other again. And we get this scene where and this is funny no matter what.
I was just gonna say I've seen this gag done in so many things, and it's funny to me every time.
It's that they're at the dinner table for Christmas, except it's a comically long dinner table. Mom is at one end with the kids, and then dad is at the other end reading the paper. So mom says in this affected accent of like, "Tell your father Merry Christmas." And DW has to run down to the other end of the table. She's out of breath, and she says, "Mother says, Merry Christmas, Father." And then Dad looks up at the paper and is like, "Tell your mother and a Happy New Year." It's just
making me laugh thinking about it now.
I mean, it is really funny, but it is kind of just like going through the possibilities of what their lives could be like. At this point, we get the idea of what if they split up? What if mom and dad split up and then they have to live with only one of their parents? And so they kind of get the pros and cons of living with mom and living with dad, which is strange. The first one is mom. So they imagine themselves coming downstairs for breakfast. And mom is there and she greets them very sweetly. Like, "It's so nice to see your beautiful faces." Arthur says, "What's for breakfast?" And mom says, "I don't know. Your father always made breakfast." And then they're like, "So there's no breakfast?" And then this is funny. Mom just goes, "No."
It's great that she stays jovial. She's not perturbed at all that they're going to starve to death.
So I guess in their imagination, mom is just completely. Do they think their mom's incompetent or something? That she just can't cook?
I mean, you know what? Dad made the breakfast. If that's what they say, then I have to believe them.
But hasn't mom made anything else? Dad's a professional cook.
Listen. She's a numbers gal. You know what I mean? She's all about those ones and zeros. She could be helped to learn how to make some toast or pour some cereal. That's what the dad's specialty is.
Which is the other end of the fantasy in which they come downstairs. Dad's prepared this blockbuster breakfast for them that it's served in a bugle horn of all things, which is an interesting touch. And then Arthur asks Dad for a drive to an event later, and then Dad says, "Sorry, Arthur, your mom took the car when she left." So apparently Dad equals food and mom equals car?
I mean, that makes sense. If you think about the way kids see their parents, that makes perfect sense to me. I remember when I was a little kid, this is a little bit unrelated, but when I was a little kid, my mom had a car and my dad had a car. But for some reason, and this is something I don't actually remember, my parents just have told me that later on, for some reason, when mom drove dad's car, I would freak out as a child. I'd be like, "You can't do that. It's dad's car. You have to drive your car." So under kid logic, this makes a lot of sense. Dad equals food. Mom equals, transportation.
But here's the thing, is that might work, except Dad has the catering van.
So I was wondering that too. I was just going to mention that. What happened to the catering van? I guess she took that as well.
But how? Physically, how?
She got good lawyers. She's an accountant after all. It's a messy divorce.
Oh my. And
if he didn't sign any prenuptial agreement, she's well within her rights to do so.
Like Kanye said, "Holla, we want prenup.
Exactly.
We want prenup." Yeah.
Or else you're going to lose your catering van.
Arthur, I also want to note that Arthur asked Dad to take him to an event called the Big Jamboree, which Jamboree not used enough. So we're sleeping on that word.
No, unless you're the Boy Scouts, there's not a lot of jamborees.
And then their final kind of part of this is, what if they end up living apart from each other? So in this fantasy, it's more Arthur driven. Arthur ends up living with mom, and he finds a truck that's a toy truck that's broken. He immediately assumes it's DW, but then mom's like, "Don't you remember? DW went to go live with your dad," and mom's holding Kate, and then Arthur's like, "Yeah, That's why it's so quiet. And then he's like, I'm going to go take Pal for a walk. And then Mom reminds him that in the divorce, Mom got Arthur and Kate, and Dad got DW and Pal, and Arthur just drops the truck and just goes, like, completely starts to freak out.
It's at this point where I wrote down, for an episode dealing with such a serious and sort of life-altering topic as divorce, it's got a pretty irreverent tone, don't you think?
You know what? That's a great point. And I had my own note here of, and this is kind of semi-serious. Can pets be a part of custody agreements?
Oh my goodness, yes. They're a huge part of custody agreements. That's one of the biggest issues could be like who gets the dog, and like people fight tooth and nail over that. Again, but you don't sign that prenup. They can take the shirt off your back, Will.
I mean, it just seemed, and yes, it's a cartoon, and it is strange to have this kind of spoken about in such a more jovial tone, I guess. But it's like since Pal is pretty much Arthur's dog, and he is kind of like the person who takes care of him, that wouldn't enter into it at all. I don't know. It's a hypothetical scenario that would never happen. It's like Arthur's worst nightmare, so it clearly doesn't have any basis in reality. So. But I did not know that about pets in custody agreements. In fact, the fantasies get even more cartoonish because then DW and Arthur imagine that they might actually have to go to an orphanage.
Oh,
DW says there'll be organs.
And so then what's followed, here's the sole thing that I remembered from this episode.
Of course.
Particularly because it might be one of my top 5 favorite Arthur jokes ever. It's one of those things where I have quoted it since I heard it as a child, and it is just A1 level prop comedy. Just, oh my goodness gracious, this is funny.
Do you want to take us through it?
Sure. So the closest comparison to orphans that the kids have is Oliver Twist. And then we sort of get this reimagining of the opening of Oliver Twist, except with Arthur characters. So it's Arthur, and he's in these rags, and he goes up to Mr. Ratburn, and he says, of course, the famous line, please, sir, may I have some ore? And even though Mr. Ratburn has the same accent, he's like, some ore? I'll give you some ore. And then he takes out a, rowing oar, a full wooden rowing oar, and puts it in his dish, which amuses Mr. Ratburn so much that he starts laughing, and then all the other orphans start laughing, and then Mr. Ratburn says, I should be paid by the laugh, and the whole thing is just like, that's good comedy right there. That's what comedy should be.
Ursula Cat noted in their email that they say that line a lot. Like, they fondly remember, may I have some ore, a lot as well, and I feel like this is probably fondly remembered by many people, so... yeah, it's hard to forget once you've seen it. Speaking of hard to forget, Mr. Ratburn's Oliver Twist sideburns are out of control.
I was trying to remember what that character is supposed to look like, because I assume it's accurate to the novel.
Well, probably, and just to the time period, but you look at Ratburn in profile, and the sideburns are where they should be on a human face, but also the way it is, it just kind of looks like he painted them on. I don't know. It just looks. Mr. Ratburn is not the type of character to have sideburns. But yeah, I'm glad that that stuck with you through all of this. And then their final one is that they imagine themselves living just completely on their own. DW says we don't need anyone but each other. So they imagine themselves living in a house that kind of looks like the one from Snow White, just a little bungalow, in the woods with Pal and Kate. And there's just a montage of them cleaning up with their animal friends and making dinner and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't go very well because, as Arthur says, we can't cook. And this was this little 30-second thing was a slice of my own personal hell because DW was humming and Arthur was whistling, and they were just doing so over each other. And I hate humming and I hate whistling.
Is this when Arthur gives, I think it's Kate who can't sleep, the advice to count all the sheep and subtract a cow?
He sure does, yeah.
Which is, again, just another great little small line.
And then it ends in a really dark manner, actually, because Arthur's singing is so bad it's keeping everybody up, and then DW says, "I miss mommy and daddy," and Arthur says, "I know, I miss them too." And then DW says something that like cuts you to the bone. She says, "I never knew you could feel this lonely, even when you're not alone."
Dark blue, dark blue. Have you ever been alone in a crowded room? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, man, if you're in the wrong mood watching this episode, that'll send you into a spiral. So they decided they can't let that happen, and they need to make sure that mom and dad stay together. So they are at the top of the stairs again. They notice dad is on his way out. Like, he's got his coat on, and he's, like, saying, "You stay, I'll go." Like, "I'm going, and that's final." We actually get a little bit of an Arthur meme alert here on the stairs. DW is right behind Arthur, and then she grabs him forcefully and says, "Daddy's leaving," and Arthur goes, "You're choking me." And I've definitely seen that meme before of DW choking Arthur.
That's funny.
And
I had not seen that before,
usually that's one
but
of the dirtier ones.
Yeah, I should seek it out, because that sounds good.
So they both run down the stairs and grab Dad, and they say, like, "Please don't go. We don't want you to go." And then Dad says, "But if I don't go, then we won't have any milk." And then Arthur kind of catches on quickly of just like, "Oh, you're going to the store?" But DW keeps pouring her heart out and just like, "Please, we don't want to end up in an orphanage like in Oliver Twits."
She once again reiterates that there'll be organs.
It's like, we don't want, like, you and mommy don't really hate each other. And what's great here is that, like, she's making this huge impassioned speech for him not to leave, and Arthur, who is caught on what's happened at this point, is making, like, the cut motion. Like,
he's also
like,
talking,
stop.
He's like, "Oh, who would believe that you guys would be leaving? Like, that is, obviously you're just going to get some milk." Like, he's kind of laid it on that, like, "Oh, I knew what was going on the whole time." Even though he really wasn't. He actually did think they were going to leave as well.
So mom comes in, and they both, of course, say that they don't hate each other. They just have, sometimes adults have disagreements, but that doesn't mean that, dad's going to leave or anything like that. So they don't really have to worry too much. And DW's still a little shell-shocked. She's just like, "You're going to the store to buy milk?" And then actually this is pretty much the end of the episode where DW kind of wipes her eyes and looks at Arthur and says, "Guess I solved that one."
and then to put the cherry on the proverbial cake, we see Nadine again, who sort of closes the book on this story because she was the one who introduced it, and says, "Don't you see now? The moral of the story, don't put your milk close to the edge of a table. It will fall."
Great advice. So we're getting into the second half of our Arthur episode this time around. It's DW's Perfect Wish. This one starts off with another piece of the DIY spirit of being a kid. Making your own calendar. Did you ever make your own calendar?
So no, I never made my own calendar, but you know what? Something about Lucas Mancini, I love a good calendar. I love a good, nice themed calendar. Whenever there's a WWE one available, I always pick that one up every year. Right now we have a Splatoon calendar in my household, another new Splatoon picture. I've gotten ones that are themed around places. I used to have a mini calendar for an office that had animals of the Canadian wilderness. I just love I love a calendar. Now here's a question for you, Will. When you have a calendar, do you peek ahead to see what's going to be on next month, or do you wait and sort of give yourself the delayed gratification of the big surprise? Ooh, it's April. What's the picture gonna be?
No, I always have to look ahead, and they usually have the charts on the back because I have to see who's going to be in my birth month of August.
Oh, see, I just wait till the month of, and that's how I figure it out.
No, I have no self-control, so I can't do that. I can't just spend 8 months wondering who's going to be in the month of August. Before we get any emails, before we get any messages, yes, we did miss DW's birthday, March the 1st. So happy belated birthday to DW. Sorry that we missed it. Arthur is making a Bionic Bunny themed calendar that he's making the illustrations of himself. I believe the February one is a giant heart that destroys buildings and makes everybody fall in love, which is apparently the epitome of evil. That's according to Arthur.
Arthur remarks, he's like, evil.
But however, once Arthur gets into March and Bionic Bunny has a huge cake for DW's birthday, he realizes that DW hasn't been very vocal about her birthday this year, which is unusual because she is usually very, very upfront about how much she looks forward to her birthday. We get like a couple of instances of her bringing it up out of thin air, and she has a genius setup where where they're just eating breakfast at the table. The DW says, "Speaking of birthdays," and Arthur says, "Who's speaking of birthdays?" DW says, "Nobody, but now that you mention it, mine's coming up." Oh, brother, that is the best.
Yeah, DW treats her birthday like I do. Everybody's gonna know about it.
And no offense to Lucas Mancini Day, but DW Day has a bit more of a pop to it.
Mm.
So we're gonna have to keep that one in mind: Lucas Mancini Day and DW Day. And then Will Young Day, I suppose. But I don't want to infringe on the gimmick. We'll have to think of something else for me. Then Arthur goes to DW's room to check on her, and she seems very hostile to the idea of it being her birthday today, and in fact throws her My Fluffy Unicorn doll at him. And in fact, this is the cold open, and the cold open actually, the episode picks up right where the cold open leaves off, where like Arthur enters DW's room again after she told him to leave her alone, and then she's still very adamant of just like, please leave me alone. And then Arthur's like, what's bothering you? And there's a great one here where DW we lean in close to DW's face, and she asks Arthur, "Do you really want to know what's wrong? Do you think you really want to know?" And Arthur's like, yeah. And DW's like, okay, just checking. But there's on the "do you really want to know," we get like shading over DW's face. She gets real serious. It's pretty funny.
DW's delivery in this episode really is the star of the show. Like, there is so many good lines from her, basically explaining the situation.
That's a great observation. DW is the star of the show, which her name's on the episode title, so you would think that she would be. But yeah, this is a real smash performance from her. I dare say it might be the best part of the episode, but we'll get into it. So DW takes us back to a couple of days ago. I believe it's 3 days ago when she asks Dad to make her just a normal cake with what was it? A normal white cake, I think.
I don't think she even specifies. I think she says like a normal cake, nothing crazy. And then Arthur's dad's like, "Oh, don't you want to try my Aloha Coconut Blizzard cake?" Which actually, the way he describes it, Will, it's not actually, because I know Arthur likes to play around and put some gross stuff together. Oh, my, super gross bulgogi beef a shrimp cake or whatever. But no, the Aloha Coconut Blizzard cake sounds pretty darn good.
Well, you took away one of my notes. I was going to ask you if you would have it, and you know what? I'm not surprised because that is fairly normal as far as things go. It's just like he mentions peach and banana pectin filling, which doesn't sound too bad if you're a fan of fruit and cake. I'm not, but I know that such people exist. I also like the DW, like, she has a list of things that she says for Dad not to put in the cake, like no this, no that, no gushy red layers. She specifically has to say no lamb. So Dad must have a lamb cake under his belt or something. So DW, at this point, still very jazzed about her birthday. She's talking about it with Emily, but and in fact, Confuse the Goose makes another appearance here. She and Emily playing Confuse the Goose, and Emily gets really friggin' serious when they're talking about turning 5. Like, they're just playing a game. DW's like, Emily's like, "You're going to be turning 5 years old." DW's like, "Yeah. Anyway, about my cake." And then Emily, like, puts her hand on the goose and then she says, "DW, listen to me." And goes into this whole monologue about how important turning 5 is and how she won't be a little kid anymore. It was a serious turn.
Well, she's having a what is it, how many times can 5 go into 100? 20?
Yes.
She's having a 20th life crisis. That's literally what she's describing. She goes, "You'll wake up one day, you're 5, and everything's changed. You know, you can't do kiddie stuff anymore. You go to a real school, kindergarten. You're not going to preschool anymore. You wake up and your life's passed you by, and that's exactly the kind of tone that she has when she's sort of describing the sensation of turning 5 to DW. It's a 20. I don't know what the version of a quarter is for a 20th. It's a 1/20th out of 100 of the life crisis.
And Emily's delivery of this, again, like stark serious, and it's really good. Like this is Vanessa Lenges was Emily's voice actor at this point, and does a really good job of selling the gravity of this situation. Or I gotta say, I mean, being DW and having all of these however number life crises at her age must be an existential nightmare to be Dora Winifred Reed sometimes. And she even asks Arthur frantically, she's like, have I wasted, did I, are the best years of my life behind me? She says, did I waste my 4s? Have I fribbled away my childhood?
I mean, DW really encapsulates the millennial struggle. Let's be honest here.
Big time. And I mean, I relate to this a lot, but the difference is that I'm 28 and DW is turning 5.
Right, but how old would you have been in 97? I probably would have been a little bit even younger than DW. So it makes sense. I've struggled just as much as her through this crazy journey we called life.
There's a reason, I guess, that DW is so emblematic of the show for people who are our age now, because we relate to her so much.
If DW was 5 years old in a show that took place in 2018, she wouldn't be having a life crisis. She'd be like a STEM student who's writing her own HTML code. She'd have 3 small businesses on a go. Generation Z, they're the ones that set. It's the millennials that are the lost generation.
Very true. Generation Z is getting it done these days.
They're running their own. They're running their own Minecraft server. They got it all down pat.
Oh, yeah, big time. And then Arthur takes it upon himself to remind DW of all the cool things that she's done when she's in her 4th year as a 4-year-old.
And that's when I realized...
Yeah.
It's a clip show episode.
Secret clip show.
It's like I was jolted awake and terrified at my computer screen as if I was watching a screamer. I was like, oh no, it's a clip show.
So, here's a question. Do TV shows do clip shows anymore? Because clip shows were a thing around the time that this would have been airing, like the 80s and the 90s and stuff like that. But do modern shows do clip shows anymore? The only one I can think of is Community, but the whole thing with that episode was that it was clips from episodes that never happened. So that was the joke.
I mean, come on. What else is there to talk about when you're stuck in an elevator with your friends? But your past adventures.
I just feel like that's a relic of old TV, is that I don't think that TV shows do clip shows anymore, just because it is so nakedly obvious, or at least it seems to be, that it's like a grab for time of we don't have anything, so let's just make an episode where they talk about the other shows and we don't have to film as much, we don't have to draw as much, all that kind of stuff. So,
well, Will, I can tell you one medium that certainly still does clip shows. As an avid anime watcher myself, they are rife with clip shows, even in 2018.
That's usually the halfway point of a season of anime, right?
Or just any waypoint. We ran out of budget point. With the manga got ahead of us point. Another good sort of subversion of clip shows. You mentioned the Community episode. I always really liked the episode of Clerks, the animated series. I think it's the second episode where they sort of do their take on clip shows.
Yeah, where they're stuck in the freezer.
Yeah, they're stuck in the freezer.
And then they keep cutting back to earlier parts of the episode. like Silent Bob breaks him out of the freezer with the crowbar, and they're just like, remember when Silent Bob broke us out of here with the crowbar, and then just flashes back to the exact same thing? Good one. I like that too. Clerks the animated series, pretty good.
Oh my god, criminally underrated.
Absolutely, and I think you might be able to still find all 6 episodes on YouTube. So check it out. Yeah, so we get over 3 minutes of clip footage. So, a typical Arthur story is about 11 minutes. So this is, almost 30% of the episode is just clips from other episodes. So yeah, we just get a bunch of them. You've seen it all before. It's a clip show. I will say that
so Arthur mentioned, like, they mentioned a lot of like famous DW moments, like her trying to trick the Tooth Fairy, the fire drill, DW getting socked in the face by the Tibbles. And then DW has this amazing line where she goes, "These are the golden memories of my childhood. A buck, a fire drill, and a fat lip." And just her delivery is so on point.
Yeah, and I mean there is a little bit of commentary here and there with the scenes. There's actually a scene that wasn't in Arthur Meets Mr. Rogers. It's specially animated for this. It's of Mr. Rogers singing DW a lullaby, which I wrote down. That's going to be a memory that will pay off when DW is our age. Like, can you imagine meeting somebody and just being like, "Yeah, Mr. Rogers came over to my house one time and he sang me a lullaby." I would want that person to be my best friend immediately.
She could be interviewed in that documentary that's coming out soon.
That's right. Oh, can't wait for that. Can't wait to cry myself stupid at that movie. So essentially, we get all these clips, and DW eventually comes around to the fact that she did have a great year as a 4-year-old, and that she wants to be the world's coolest 5-year-old. And she thanks Arthur for helping her realize how great she is. Which I'll just say, DW can be the world's coolest 5-year-old, but in 2021, my niece is going to take that title handily.
That's right, and she'll have her own startup company that, is in like an app or something that gets a drone to take out your compost or something, and she'll be drowning in Bitcoin from the profits.
And we get back to the actual, like, the wraparound of the episode, the wraparound, the clip show. And DW goes downstairs, and it turns out that everybody's been waiting for her down there because they're going to have a surprise party for her. And DW needs to think of the perfect wish to make when she blows out the candles. And so she takes suggestions from the crowd, which is, her family and Grandma Thora.
Arthur's dad has a suggestion right off my own heart. It's something I wish for many a birthday, which is a new pair of sneakers. She's like, I put to blow out the candles. She's like, "Yo, it's Yeezy season. Let's go. I need those 350s. Yo, I wish for those Air Max 97s. You know the ones I'm talking about."
I feel like that might have been a bit of a leading question. Objection, prosecution, leading the witness. Because I feel like Dad probably got DW new sneakers, and just like, here's a wish that will definitely come true if she asks for it.
Unlike a pony, which they try and get. She says, "Well, I'll just wish for a pony," and Arthur's dad does a great job of like just not. He's like, I highly recommend you don't do that. I do not think that will come true."
It won't come true. Trust me. Yeah, I like that line a lot. Mom also says in true mom fashion, "Why don't you wish for a happy year?" And DW says, "Mommy, there has to be something in it for me." Again, nothing. Those selfish millennials.
Arthur's speaking of selfish, Arthur's getting unhinged at this point. DW's indecision's driving him crazy. He's like, "I'm not going to eat cake with wax on it." And then there's this great part where he goes, "Look, Kate's starving." Hard cut to Kate, and she's just like kind of happy and giggling.
Yeah, and then Grandma Thora finally helps DW to realize her wish, because we actually cut back to when Grandma Thora had her birthday at Once Upon a Restaurant, and she wished that that Arthur and DW would be happy and all this kind of stuff. And we get a very cute line here that made me go aw, which is DW gives Grandma a hug and says, "Who else but Grandma would give up her own wish for us?" Very, very cute. So DW finally gets what she wants. And yeah, at this point, Arthur is like, "Can we cut out the hugging? I want some cake," or whatever. He's living
up to DW's image of him.
I was going to say, as much as DW likes to paint Arthur as like a cake maniac, he's, you're right, living up to it. He's fulfilling the stereotype. And then the end of the episode is them enjoying the cake, which is, again, normal cake. Look, vanilla, cake with white frosting, all that kind of stuff. And DW is determined not to tell her wish to Arthur, or else it won't come true. So Arthur gets up from the table. Arthur gets up from the table. Kate's little bowl of cake gets upended by Pal and nearly flies into Arthur's face. This is almost like Final Destination with cake here, because it's like Arthur avoids the first cake, but then he slips on it, and then his face falls into the whole cake.
Final Destination with cake is like a great way to describe this. That's hilarious.
And then DW says that was fast, implying that her wish was for Arthur to end up with a face full of cake. In fact, she tells the camera as much, of just like, you're not supposed to tell a wish, even if it does come true.
Which I think is a great note to end on. It could have ended on that super sentimental note with being like, oh, Grandma Thora made her wish for us. But I love that it ends with the DW being totally petty. It's very on brand and on character for her.
It's her birthday, and as far as wishes go, there have been a lot worse. And that's the end of that episode, the end of that clip show. Ugh. So let's go back to Mom and Dad have a great big fight. What'd you think of this great big episode?
You know, later on when we were mentioning Mr. Rogers, it kind of reminded me of one of the things they mentioned in the Mr. Rogers documentary's new trailer, is that he would, you know, even though it was a kid's show, he would tackle complicated subjects. There was a week on assassination, and then there's a extended bit in the trailer where they show clips where Mr. Rogers is explaining the divorce to really young kids. And I think it's interesting because I like it when shows do that, where they don't talk down to kids and they sort of show them things that would help them deal with complicated issues like that. And I think this Arthur episode does it effectively, not to the same extent. It's not really an episode about divorce, more so an episode about, you know, adults sometimes don't get along, and you need to remember that that's not that big of a deal. Like, sometimes people get a little cross with each other, but it doesn't necessarily mean they hate each other. But also, speaking of divorce, I love how irreverent Arthur and DW's fantasies, like, for such a serious topic, they're very outlandish and, like, funny. How they're either destitute, or their mother is unable to cook, or they're basically under house arrest, unable to leave their house because their father can't drive any vehicles. All of these, like, super exaggerated imagination sequences I got a big kick out of. Overall, I think it's a very funny episode that has a really good message.
I'll tell you, it's a lot funnier than I thought it would be. You know, you see a title like "Mom and Dad Have a Great Big Fight," and like, okay, well, I can kind of guess what the message is going to be about. But the thing is that, I mean, this did have a message in the end, but it's not the kind of message episode that we're used to seeing with Arthur. It was like a lot more funny, a lot more off the wall. You know, the Oliver Twist part especially.
Oh my gosh!
So
also the framing device of Nadine, and then all of that coming to a head with. So don't put your milk too close to the edge.
I mean, so I kind of thought that I would respond a bit better to this episode than I did. Not to say that I didn't like it. In fact, I did like it. But I didn't like... I think I was almost expecting to love it, which is a hard bar to overcome sometimes. So that's certainly not the episode's fault. It's just I didn't respond to this as strongly as I kind of thought that I would. Still, I thought a lot of the imagination parts were creative. I thought they were mostly pretty funny, and it is a relatable situation. Kind of reminded me of that part of my childhood, and I thought that they dealt with it in the end in a pretty good way. So not the best episode I've ever seen, but pretty good. I'd say pretty good. I'm glad that, like, again, I'm glad that we have this podcast for a number of reasons, but I find that sometimes we'll come across an episode that, in talking about it, it either gets better or it gets worse. When I watched DW's Perfect Wish, and when we got to the clip show part, like, I was really turned off. I was like, oh man, because it's, you know, say what you will about the merits of clip shows, or like whether this one's a good one or a bad one. It's like, it just kind of...
Who is espousing the merits of clip shows? They're all bad. I'm
just trying to cover both bases. But you know what? Yeah, clip shows are bad. I shouldn't ride the fence on this. Clip shows, bad. But and so seeing it on one of my favorite shows was like, oh, this really sucks. But I think that this episode is a lot stronger around it, which kind of makes the clip show part of it almost too bad. I feel like if they'd fleshed it out to like a full episode, this could have been really good, because the beginning and the end, like the rapper part of it, was really strong. I thought it was DW was funny, and like it's an interesting part of her character to make her kind of so prone to existential doom at points. And
every DW line hit super hard.
And having Arthur kind of bring her back from the brink was actually very sweet. There's a moment at the end there where DW gives him a hug, and she says, like, "Thank you for reminding me how great I am." But it belies kind of their relationship of, Arthur says, "You're my little sister, and I want you to have a happy birthday," and you know that he means it. And it's just like, that's great. It's just too bad that we had to have that middle part of it. So it is actually like a pretty strong episode, but just with a real big asterisk on it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I for me, this is as close to a hard pass as I'll say with any Arthur episode. Usually, I'll say I either recommend an episode, or it was kind of middling, or maybe every once in a while, episodes outright bad. But I couldn't really recommend this episode to anybody, especially if you, much like us, have seen all the previous episodes. I could see this being entertaining if you hadn't. But if I had the ability to skip this episode altogether, I would. And I don't even think the framing device is worth trudging through the clip show parts. I will say, again, some of my favorite DW lines in this episode. But even the ending, like the end sequence of her trying to pick her wish, I thought like the joke went on just a few beats too long. And I was like there was just a few too many suggestions. And I was like, why do I care about this witch thing? Like, the episode's like already reached its climax. Like, DW doesn't feel bad about aging anymore, and I just had to watch a clip show. Like, I don't know. This episode left a bad taste in my mouth, and so I'd say this one is as close as a hard pass as I could say.
I don't blame you for feeling that way at all, and yeah, especially like when you consider like it's a clip show, when they kind of faff around at the end and they're just like basically killing time, just like. It's like you spent all this time on clip shows, and now you're like, you're just, what am I trying to say? You're like stretching this out. Like, no, like just get on with it, okay? So I completely understand your feelings. I'm a little, I'd say, it's worth a watch, but if you skip like the middle 6 minutes or something, but if you feel as negatively towards clip shows as Lucas does, which you are definitely in your right to feel that way, proceed with caution, or don't proceed at all, especially if you've been following along with us. Okay, well, that's another Arthur episode in the books, as the end of Season 3 is upon us real soon. And before we get to the final episode of Season 3, don't forget to keep it coming. On all social media aspects, we want to hear from you and what you think of Arthur, what you think of us, and what you think in general. Facebook.com/Elwood City Limits. Follow us on Twitter @ECL Podcast. ElwoodCityLimits.tumblr.com. Send in your asks, anonymous or otherwise. Send in emails like Leanne and Ursula Katz at ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com. And of course, you can find us on Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, I should say, on Google Play, and our website, ElwoodCityLimits.libsyn.com, LIBSYN. And there's ElwoodCityLimits.patreon.com if you would like to be in the show, if you'd like to have your name in the show. And we've also been talking about some other Patreon exclusive rewards that we may be offering coming up on a week where you might be expecting not to hear us at all. So stay tuned for that. And I can tell you this, if you're a patron, we really appreciate it. All right, next time, Lucas, you and I talk, it's going to be the final episode of Season 3. And then after that, it's going to be... so this has been a 15-episode season, I believe. And then after this, it's 10-episode seasons, pretty much the rest of the show. So we're going to be making our way through them.
The seasons are just flying by at this point.
That's right, and it's always a breeze when we're talking about Arthur. Next week, we're talking Arthur and DW clean up, and the long, dull winter. We're just coming out of a long, dull winter ourselves. I thought maybe this was the... I don't think this is the snowstorm episode that you love so much, but I don't think we're too far away from that at this point. For Elwood City Limits, we will see you next time when we see you as we close out Season 3. And that means, of course, that our Top 5 episode for Season 3 will not be far behind, so keep your ears out for that as well. Will Young here saying goodbye, and Lucas Mancini saying...
Hey guys, this is usually the part of the show where I repeat a quote from the episode that's funny, but this is my chance. I'm going to give my predictions for the NBA Finals. Okay, it's playoff basketball season, so I think on the Eastern Conference Final, it's going to be the Philadelphia 76ers and the Toronto Raptors, and I think in the Western Conference, it's going to be the Rockets and the Warriors. Who's going to be in the final? I can't make that prediction until I know if Steph Curry's going to be okay, but yeah, you could take that to the bank. Just tell him Lucas Thomas sent you and that he knows what's going on with the NBA Finals.
See you next time.